Welcome back to the Arbitress YouTube channel. In today's class we are going to learn how to make this beautiful sheer gathered top. A very simple blouse and it's really easy to make. If this is something you would like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. This is a very simple blouse and I'm going to use chiffon fabric for this. You can also use soft crepe or crepe for it. So we are going to need our chiffon fabric and you're going to need your elastic. Very important. You can also use your smoky thread to do this, but elastic is easier. I'm going to be working with this tiny elastic to gather it back to the actual size because it's like an oversized top. So for this you're going to need your blouse length measurement, and remember that this is an off-shoulder blouse. So for me, I'm going to go up by around 6 inches before taking my measurement. Okay, so now it means before taking your measurement you go up by 6 inches just like I have done. But again, I'm going to be creating like a channel for the rope here at the neckline area, which is the starting point, the upper part. So for that channel I'm going to mark 2 inches. Okay, so now I'm marking 2 inches and I'll make it into a straight line. Okay, so I hope you can see it. So this is my line for the casing, so you can also fold it inwards before you start taking your measurements. Okay, so remember to take that line. So now from there I'm going to go up by 6 inches before I start taking my actual measurement. So the important measurement you're going to need is your under bust measurement. So for this, because you don't want it to be too tight, it has to be a little bit puffy to bring out the style that you're working with. My actual under bust is 14 inches, so I'm going to add 1 or 2 inches to that, so that by the time I drag it to my actual under bust, it will still give me this fullness around that area that I want. So now if I'm working with an under bust measurement of 14, I'm going to add 1.5 inches to that, or 2 inches, and then I'm going to mark that point. So that is where you start gathering with your elastic. So now the first gathering is going to be right on your measurement, that under bust measurement plus whatever allowance that you added. That's where the first gathering is going to be. And as you can see, I have made a straight line on that point as well. Sorry, the chalk is not so fitable, just follow what I'm doing. So here, so before I continue with the other gathers, I want to show you the measurement that I used in folding my fabric. The front and back is folded together. Like I said, this is an overlap blouse, so my actual bust measurement is 44 divided by 4 is 11. So I added extra 3 inches to 11, which made it 1 2 3 14. Then I added 1 inch for my seam allowance, so you can see that I have a total of 15 inches here. That was what I used to fold my fabric. So 15 inches folded in 4 places to get my front and back. Okay, so now to get our armhole, remember we went over by 6 inches, so my armhole is 9. Here I'm going to mark the 9 inches for my armhole here. If you want it a little bit free, you can make it 9.5 inches, just like that. So on that point now I'm going to mark around, remember all of this is not my actual neckline measurement, I just made it in excess so that I can use the rope to gather it back. So for that I'm going to mark for the armhole from the side. This is the side of the bodice. I can just come inwards by around 5 inches here, or 4 depending on how free you want it to be, and then I'm going to curve like this. Okay, so I try to get a blue chalk so that we can see it better. So I'm just going to curve it like this to get my armhole curve, and then I'll go ahead and cut out what I have here. You can see I'm cutting it together with my folded allowance. Remember we are folded in 2 inches on that point. Okay, so now like I said, it's a free top. The next measurement you're going to need is your full measurement, your full blouse measurement. For this, including all the allowances, I have about 29 inches here. Okay, because I want it to be like a gown top, I want it to be as long as possible. So now what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cut the sleeve. But before that, I just want to explain how we are going to be gathering it so that we'll not get confused. Remember, the first elastic, the first gathering is going to be right where we want our underbust to be. So now we're going to have 3 different gathers, and between each of the gathers I want it to have like 2 inches allowance. So from here now, I'll go ahead and mark 2 inches downwards, and then I'll make that into a straight line for my second gathers, and then from here again I'll mark another 2 inches downward, and I will gather that, and that's going to be my third gathers as well. So sorry, let me use this chalk. So I'll mark 2 inches from this starting point. From there I'll mark another 2 inches, and I'll have 1 2 3, which I'm going to use this elastic to gather back to my actual waist measurement. Remember, this is just a free top now, it's not my actual measurement, it's an oversized measurement. So we are going to use our elastic to change it back to our actual measurement. So now we are done with cutting the blouse. The next thing is to go ahead and cut the sleeve. So for the sleeve is an oversized sleeve as well. So for the width, my actual round sleeve is round armhole is 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I added extra 2 inches to that, which made it 11, and 1 inch for seam allowance. You can add as much as you want depending on how free you want it to be. And for the length as well, I'm using a total length of about 24 inches. It's going to have an elastic around the wrist area as well, so I want it to be as full as possible. So that's the measurement I'm using. So to cut out the armhole is very simple. All you just need to do is to bring one of the bodies that you have already cut out. I'm going to fold in the 2 inches allowance just like this, and then I'll place the armhole area on the armhole side. Remember, this is the closed side of the sleeve, this is the open side. So on this open side where my armhole is going to be, I'll just fold and place the armhole of the pattern that I already cut out, which is this. So I'm folding in the 2 inches casing allowance, and you're also going to have a 2 inches casing allowance on the armhole as well, because your sleeve extension, your rope is going to extend to the sleeve area. So for that, you're going to fold in your 2 inches first. Please don't forget that. So you're going to mark 2 inches from the upper part of the sleeve, and then you fold it in just like we did for the actual bodies before you go ahead and cut out your armhole. I'm being careful with this because the chiffon fabric shifts a lot. So I have folded that inwards. The next thing I'm going to do now is to place the armhole on that side where we're going to cut our armhole curve, and then I'll just cut out what I have there. Make sure that you have arranged it very well because the fabric moves a lot, like I said. So now what I'm doing is cutting out the armhole for my sleeve as well. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and mark where my elastic will be. So obviously the measurement that I have on the hem of this sleeve is bigger than what I have on my actual wrist, so we're going to use elastic to gather that as well. So to decide where you want to place it, after taking off the 1 inch for hemming, from there I'll mark 6 inches upward, and that is where I'm going to be placing my elastic. So now from the hem, I'm going to mark around 7 inches. You can do 5, you can do 6, you can do 4, depending on what you want. And I'll make that into a straight line as well. Okay, so to sew it, I'm going to start by sewing in the elastic first. You can sew your bodice before that, but I feel it's going to be easier for me. So you can see this is the main bodice. I have chalked out the lines that the elastic is going to follow. So the first one here is where your underbust is going to be. I'll go ahead and use my elastic to drag it. So what you just need to do now is to sew here, and then you drag and sew so that it can gather the fabric that you have there for you. So you continue to sew. So if you want, depending on how tight you want it to be, remember this is the half of the body, this is the front, you still have the back. So my actual waist measurement is 34 inches. So for that 34 inches now, you're going to divide it into two. That's one for front and one for the back, because the front and back are separate. So if you divide 34 by 2, you're going to have 17 inches. So now, depending on how firm you want this to be, you can deduct 2, 3 or 4 inches to cut out your elastic. So if you're deducting 3 inches from 14, that's going to be around 11 inches. So what you just need to do now is to come here and cut out an elastic of 11 inches for front and 11 inches for back, but that's going to be a little bit tight, so I'm just going to be deducting around 2 inches for mine. So here I'm going to cut out an elastic of 12 inches, and that is what I am going to gather this with. So here, if I cut out the 12 inches, I will sew from here, from the tip here, and then I'm going to drag it to the end of my fabric and then sew just like that. So I'll gather the front and the back, and then I'll also gather the tip of the sleeve, the 7 inches that I marked for the sleeve as well, so my actual wrist measurement, and then I'll bring it back so that we can see how to sew the bodice and the sleeve together. So I have gone ahead to gather it. You can see the 3 gathers that we have here, 1, 2, 3. You can see that it can stretch as much as you want. So this is the first one for the main bodice, the front, and this is the back. So for the sleeve as well, I have gathered the hem of the sleeve, so you can see what we have. So to sew it, what I'm going to do now is to take them and sew the side, join the side together. Then after joining the side, I'm going to sew the sleeve to it, and the 2 inches allowance that I left, I'm going to sew it together with the sleeve now to create my casing. Okay, so what you just need to do is to first cover it like this and hem. You fold in half an inch and hem. So after sewing it, I'm going to sew round again so that I can create casing for my rope. I already made the rope. It can be as long as you want. So I'll go ahead and join the front and back together first. Okay, just lay the front and back on each other, and then you join it. So after joining it on this armhole area, that's where you're going to join your sleeve to it together like this. Then after joining it together, that's when I will make the casing. So I've gone ahead to sew the sleeve. You can see the armhole area. I've joined the sleeve to the bodice on both sides, and then I sew the body on the side seam as well. So now this is what the neckline area looks like. You can see how wide it is. It is very wide. So the 2 inches allowance that I left, I used it to hem it inwards like this, and then I made another stitch, if you can see. So this second stitch that I made is what is going to be my casing. So on the center front area, I made sure to leave this space. Okay, you can see that I stopped stitching here and here. So you just make sure that this part falls at the center front, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my rope to gather this wide neckline back to my actual measurements. Okay, so I'm just going to pass it around this extra hole. So this excess that we have here is just going to form like ruffle on the neckline area for us. You can also use an elastic for this, but I just prefer to use a rope so that I can control it anyhow I want. So here now, I'm just going to go ahead and start passing my rope around the neckline. Okay, so I have gone ahead to use the rope to gather it, and you can see now that it is looking normal now. This is the back and this is the front. So if you notice, because I cut my casing together and I folded it inwards, you will see that the rope is now inwards. Okay, so to avoid this, what you will do is to detach your facing separately so that you can sew it in a way that you sew, and then your casing that you're using for your facing is going to be facing outwards like this. So my rope is inside. As you can see, this is the wrong side of the fabric. So what I'm going to do is just to make a small incision here, and then I'll find a way to finish it off so that I can be neat, and then from there I'm going to bring out my rope. Okay, so as you can see, I've done that now, and then I'll find a way to hem it inward so that it can be neat. And this is what I have. This is what it looks like on the wrong side. So now my ropes are outside, so I'll take it to the mannequin now so that we can see what this beautiful blouse looks like. Well, this is what it looks like now. This is the neckline area. You can adjust it anyhow you want with your rope. This is the waistline. I can see that the elastic that we have there just helps adjust it. I affirmed this on the lower part, so this is what the full blouse looks like. And then this is the sleeve as well, so around this wrist area there is an elastic to make it fitted as well. And then I hemmed the sleeve on the lower part as well, so this is what the other side of the sleeve looks like. So this is what the blouse looks like on the mannequin. Like I said, on the neckline area you can also use elastic to gather it. You just need to pass the elastic through the channel that we created. This is what the full view of the blouse looks like. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.